I don't feel so good, but it's time to make a video. Hello, Tenno Zelp here. Today we are going to look at the mechanics of distance, range, or length in Warframe. This is a suggested video and question by Angrylatinomix. He or she wanted to know more on distance in Warframe, especially when it comes to weapon range and movement, which I will try my best to share with you as much as I could. Before we get into those questions specifically, we need to understand how the game sees distance and length, which seems confusing. For example, here we have Frost, which is a very good Warframe for this experiment because how easily it is to see the circumference of the snow globe. By default, the snow globe has a 5-meter radius, and at this angle, the radius seems to be as long as Frost's height, making it feel like 5 meters isn't much, and that the globe is really close. Also, if Warframes were to be 5 meters high, they would be giants relatively to us. Wait, that will make the operator giants too. Why it would seem so and why it feels that way is all due to the angle we perceive in and is known as parallax error. If you were to do this in capture mode in this angle, you can actually see a much sensible distance ratio, although technically parallax error still exists, but it just makes much more sense this way, so we're gonna go with this, okay? Before we start making measurements, we need to know where the center of the globe is. It's actually slightly in front of Frost and also slightly above ground level when facing forward. This is more obvious if you have a smaller globe. So we have to make sure that the Frost is standing at the middle of the globe and also that we start measuring from around his hip level. So if we were to assume that the globe is 5 meters in radius, put some scale into it, add some numbers, and we have created an in-game meter ruler. No, not this red ugly line thingy that I may or may not have drawn with paint, but instead this ugly creation that is not mine. You see, with Frost's height, we can use him as a comparison to do a lot of measurements. Don't worry, you'll get it in just a minute. Anyways, here we can see that Frost is actually about 1.8 meters tall. The reason we can't just use the red ruler to measure everything is because when our angle and distance changes, so does the height of everything else. But if we have Frost next to the object that we are measuring, we can scale the scale in scale with scales that make sense. Did that make sense? I'd like you to pay attention to this line on the wall, because from now on we're going to use this wall to do our height measurement and use this line as part of the scaling process to our scale. Now remember, this is not 100% accurate. As mentioned before, parallax error still comes into play, but the error is way lesser than the angle of a third-person shooter view. But there is something else besides parallax error that makes virtual games hard for us to judge distance, and that is how our eyes perceives depth. So you probably know this, but having two eyes, one on your left and one on your right, creates an overlapping field of vision in front of you, which helps you determine distance. This is known as stereoscopic vision, and most of the great hunters in the animal kingdom has them for catching moving prey. This means we have two separate images from each eye, which our brain then merged them to create a sense of distance or depth. As much as developers want to make games that gives us that sense of depth with size diminishing over distances and shadowy outlines, up to the point of actually creating a virtual 3-dimensional space, they still could not present that well through a monitor, which is ultimately projecting to us as a flat 2-dimensional image. This is why VR gaming with its fancy headsets, which I cannot afford, is probably going to be more and more popular over time. With that said, our mind is an amazing thing. Through just trial and error from a game, it could estimate distances really well. It's like if you were to close one eye right now, you would still know how far to reach to get to the things around you because of past memories and experiences. With sufficient data, your mind is able to generate and build its very own virtual world to simulate and judge distance for you. So one of the easiest way to actually judge distance in Warframe is to use the waypoint function. When you use waypoint on something, it will actually display the distance from the waypoint to you. So in this case, the pillar in front of me is about 31 meters away. But how accurate exactly is this? So for example, right now I'm standing at this point and I want to know how far is this point over here. And it shows me 3 meters. Okay, and that is actually not very accurate. So let me show you why. If you were to walk all the way to that waypoint, right on top of the waypoint, you'll still see 2 meters. And that is because of where the origin of that waypoint starts. Okay, it doesn't start at ground level from Frost's feet. Instead, it starts from around the head area. So let's say if I were to crouch, then you'll see that that figure went down to 1 meters away. So how do I find that origin point more accurately? Now the idea that I have is pretty simple but also very tedious. And what you have to do is you want to go really close to a wall and put a waypoint on it. Okay, so you're going to see that it is 1 meters. If I go close enough, it becomes 0 meters for the first time ever. And you know that you are so close to that point that it is below 0.45 because the game has this habit of rounding up numbers that is about 0.5. So you know that you have to be below 0.5 meters. So what you want to do is you go back and then you go up a little bit. So waypoint up a bit, go really close, it's still 0. Go up a bit, go really close, it's still 0. Go up a bit, some more, like that. Go there you go. So at this point, it no longer shows a 0. And since you're going up really slowly, you can pretty much assume that this point has exceeded the 0.45 amount meters. Therefore, it shows a 1. So that point is most likely really close to 0.5. Now what you have to do next is that you want to find the opposite side, the lower part of that 0.5. So try to remember where the location is and then do that again, but this time you're gonna do the below one. So here you get 0, here you get here's 1 already. Okay, maybe I went a little bit too far, so let's come back up a bit. Oh, I got 0, so it was almost just nice. Okay, let's do that again. So now this is the lower part of the 0.5. So therefore, if you take that both limits and you get the middle, that is where your origin is actually coming from, and it's roughly about around Frost's head, maybe slightly below eye level. Does Frost even have an eye? Okay, back to the actual distance of this point on the ground. If you use trigonometry, that 3 meters would be the hypotenuse, and assuming that since Frost's height is 1.8 meters, minusing about 0.1 meter, that should reach around eye level to give you 1.7 meters. You should get the actual ground distance of about 2.5 meters instead, which is not that bad. But if you remember that 3 meter displayed on the ground can be also inaccurate, since anything from 2.5 meters to 3.44 meters will also display as 3 meters. Then you are looking at a possible 50% error shown by that waypoint. However, the error is reduced the further the object distance you are measuring, because the further the object is, the similar the distance of the hypotenuse and also the ground distance. Ever wondered when Wiki says a weapon has a certain amount of range, does that range start from the Warframe, or does it start from the center of your weapon, or does it start from the tip of your weapon? Over here we have the Pantera, and according to Wiki, it has a 5 meter range for the secondary fire. So we're going to put that to the test and see, assuming that we do not know the range, and we're going to find out for ourselves, and we could see based on Wiki's range, where does it actually start from? Does it start from the weapon or the Warframe? Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to slowly approach the wall from being out of range to be in range, and immediately when the secondary fire of the Pantera hits the wall, you're gonna stop, because that is the range that the Pantera secondary fire could reach. Okay, and after that, you're gonna slowly mark the waypoint all the way up until it changes from a 5 meter to a 6 meter. Now again, the 5 meter shown can be 4.5 and it could be a 5.44544, so it's not very accurate. So what we're going to do is we're going to find 5.5 by slowly going up until it changes to 6 meter. Now that point where it changes to 6 meter is exactly 5.5 meters. So now that we have the hypotenuse, and since we measured this wall before, we have a scale representing how tall this wall is, and from there we could get another set of information and do the calculations, and you could see 4.9 meters. Since we are taking values of distance from the Warframe to the wall, this means that if our value is more than Wiki's, then their measurements of range could be from the weapon to the wall. But since our value is smaller, their range value is most likely to be from the Warframe as well. Well, I guess this means that you do not get range advantages if you have freakishly long arms. When it comes to melee weapons and their range, things gets really confusing, because even though they belong in a similar category, they could have different attack range, and that sort of implies that a different weapon could have their own unique attack range. To top it off, you also have stance, which alter your attack patterns, and when your attack patterns is different, you cover different areas, and therefore you have different range at different areas as well. So it's just really confusing and really hard to test. Now I come across a video that someone actually did a testing on this, and what they did was he went to different missions, looked for containers, marked the container, and slowly attacked towards the container. And until the point where it hits the container and the container is busted, he will look at the range from the waypoint. Now again, we know that because of the error, the plus minus 0.5 and the hypotenuse thing, and you're gonna have some error over there, but still that is a good video and it takes a lot of time to do. So I will put the link at the description, or maybe a card if you want to check it out. But there is another thing that I would like to point out, is that he is testing on the first attack of different weapons. Now just because the first attack, because again with the stance, just because the first attack hits it doesn't mean that the second attack will hit that far. It also doesn't mean that the second attack won't hit that far. It might even hit even further. So the true potential of the weapon is still not really shown. So long story short, I don't really know how to test for a melee weapon, and I don't think I can do it until the DE sort of reveals more information on melee weapons and their range. I guess that is pretty much all I could say. For the question about distance and movement, I believe you want to know how to cover as much distance while moving, or basically travel fast from one point to another, because distance is not the only issue here, since sprint speed, bullet jump speed, jump angle, friction, sliding, gliding, and even rolling all plays a part in covering more ground quickly. I will save that for a future video on parkour. You know what? Looking back at your questions, I don't think I've actually answered any of them. I'm so sorry. Please still like and subscribe. Join my Discord and leave your video suggestions there. Try not to leave it anywhere else, because I'm actually having trouble keeping track. And for some weird reason, YouTube is not notifying me on all the comments I should be getting. And I don't know why. I do read every single one of them and they are beautiful. So I will see you in the next video. Have a pleasant day. Bye bye.